Chapter 6. The bus rattled along the two-lane highway, the afternoon sun sliding in and out of the windows. Ronan sat halfway back, duffel at his feet, a ticket stub folded in his shirt pocket. Outside, the fields rolled away in shades of green and gold. He kept his eyes on them as if memorizing the lay of the land. It would be a long time before he saw Woodford County again. Somewhere outside of Nashville, the rhythm of the tires on the road pulled his thoughts backwards, past the wedding, past the cabin, into a cold January morning 2 years earlier. Gideon Worthington had died quietly in his sleep. They said his heart had simply decided it was time. Ronan remembered standing in the parlor with the other hands, his cap in his hands as the family gathered in the front pews of the church. The Worthington name was enough to fill every seat. Men who had never mucked a stall spoke as though they had known Gideon all their lives. Women wept into lace handkerchiefs. Ronan had watched the casket pass, the Worthington crest gleaming in the weak winter light. He had known the man well, or he hadn't known the man well, not in the way a son knows a father, but there had been moments. The day Gideon had shown him how to check a horse's hooves properly, telling him to take care of the small things, boy, and the big things will take care of themselves. The time he had stepped in when Asher's temper had gotten the better of him, resting a hand on Ronan's shoulder and saying, "This one's worth keeping." There weren't many moments, but there were enough. Ronan had respected Gideon in the way you respect a man who stands solid in his boots, and now he was gone. The bus jolted over a rough patch, snapping Ronan back to the present. Outside, the light was changing, flatter, less familiar. He shifted in his seat, reached into his shirt pocket, and touched the St. Christopher medal Maggie had given him. He didn't know exactly where the road ahead would take him, first basic training, then wherever the Army thought he was needed, but he knew it was away from everything that had defined him so far. Training was relentless, but Ronan thrived. His quiet focus, sharp eye for detail, and steady nerve under pressure set him apart. He wasn't the loudest, fastest, or strongest, but he could memorize a map after one glance, recall a face after a passing meeting, and stay perfectly still for hours if the job required it. It was those traits that caught the attention of a man who showed up one evening after drills. He wasn't in uniform, but everyone on base gave him a wide berth. "Private Callahan," the man asked. "Yes, sir." "I'm not a sir. Name's Halverson. I work elsewhere." Halverson didn't waste time. He explained that certain assignments required a blend of observation, discretion, and adaptability, skills Ronan seemed to possess in abundance. The work was quiet, often overseas, and always under another name. You'd be seconded to another branch for a while, Halverson said, but your cover will be solid. In your case, horses. You know bloodlines, bedding, the whole bit, and in certain circles that gets you places no badge or uniform will. Ronan studied him, and if I say no, then we never had this conversation. That night, Ronan in the barracks thought of Gideon. The old man had understood something about playing the long game, about knowing when to move and when to stay still. Maybe this was his move. By morning, his answer was yes. Chapter 7. Newmarket didn't announce itself. it unfolded. Low barns with weathered timbers, hedges trimmed like habits, and lanes that smelled faintly of turf and rain. In the early light, horses went out in twos along the gallops, their breath like steam rising from a kettle. Ronan stood at the fence, hands in his pockets, counting strides without thinking about it. "You're the Kentuckian," a voice said beside him, smooth as good bourbon. Ronan turned. The man had a white thatch of hair, skin like old paper, and a posture that hadn't surrendered an inch to time. A tweed coat, a walking stick he didn't seem to need. Sir James Whitcomb, as unmistakable as any crest. "Ronan Callahan," Ronan said, offering a hand. Sir James took it, appraising him the way a horseman appraises a yearling: bone, eye, balance. "Halverson says you're ahead for horses." "Halverson always says very little worth repeating, so I've come to look for myself." "Happy to earn my keep," Ronan said. Sir James tilted his head toward the string trotting past. "That long-shouldered filly, the bay, tell me her fault." Ronan watched one pass, then another. "She eats ground, but she changes leads late. I'd school her through the turn. She'll get it if you're patient." "Huh." Sir James' mouth twitched. "Come along then. Let's make a liar of Halverson." They walked the yard as the morning unfurled. Stable lads led horses to the walker. A farrier hammered a rhythm that felt like history. Ronan took in the order of one place, the way brushes were hung in the pairs, the way tack was oiled and rolled like maps. "Father." She came from the tack room carrying a bridle over one shoulder, hair pulled back in a simple tie, cheeks flushed from work. Not a debutante, a horsewoman. Ilsa Whitcomb had the focus of someone accustomed to being useful. Sir James gestured between them. "Miss Isla, this is Mr. Callahan of Kentucky. He's here to help us remember what we already know." "Is that so?" Isla said, smiling as she shifted the bridle to her other shoulder. "And what do we already know, Mr. Callahan?" "That a good horse forgives a multitude of sins," Ronan said. She laughed, quick, surprised. "We agree, then." She nodded toward the schooling ring. "Come, I'd like your eyes on a colt who thinks he's more clever than he is." They crossed to the ring where a gray with a bright eye circled, tossing her head. "Silver Sovereign," Isla said with a sort of pride that doesn't boast. "Too smart by half. He's found 3 ways to avoid doing the one thing we've asked." Ronan leaned on the rail, watched in silence, then spoke low. "He wins the argument because you let him pick the question. Start him 10 yards early into your request. He likes to see the trick coming. Show it to him and then ask for something else." Isla glanced at him as if he had told her a family secret. "You read fast." "Only the obvious parts," he said. "Those are the hardest to see." Sir James, listening, tapped his stick once on the ground. "Well, let's see if Kentucky has imported clarity along with himself." Isla climbed through the rail, had a quiet word with the rider, and the next circuit the gray obliged, stubbornly at first, then with a sigh you could almost hear. Ronan said nothing. Isla returned a strand of hair worked loose at her temple. "Thank you," she said. "You did the work," he answered. Sir James' eyes cut to him. Lunch at 1. We talk pedigrees. Isla, try not to let our guests starve before then. He moved off, leaving them in the swell of damp sand and new sweat. Isla kept her eyes on the gray a moment longer, then looked back. So what does Kentucky want with Newmarket? Same thing everyone wants, Ronan said, to learn something and pretend he knew it all along. Modesty, dangerous on a man with your eyes, she said lightly. All right, Mr. Callahan from Kentucky, come see the broodmare barn. If you faint at the smell, I'll tell Father you're a fraud. They walked. A breeze lifted, carrying the sound of hammers, a lark, distant hooves on the turf. Ronan let the cadence of the place settle inside himself. He found the rhythm quickly, and as he always did, observe, listen, fit your step to the ground you're on. They reached the long barn with its white doors and neat brass numbers. Inside, mares turned their heads as if to count them. Isla ran her hand along the stall door. Halverson called you practical. Ronan kept his face still. You know Halverson? He appears every few years like a family solicitor who refuses to die. Father doesn't like him, which means Father thinks he's necessary. And you? I don't trust men on principle, she said. I distrust what they won't say. Ronan met her gaze briefly. Then you'll never trust me entirely. She didn't flinch. I didn't say I required entirely. Come along. They took lunch in the small office off the main yard. Tea, bread, cold beef, mustard with a bite back. Sir James unfurled a pedigree chart like a general laying out a campaign. Your bluegrass families have become enamored with speed, he said, stabbing a line with his finger. A vice America shares with youth. Ronan buttered his bread. Speed pays on Saturday. Stamina makes a stallion on Sunday. Sir James's eyes warmed almost imperceptibly. You see? Useful. Isla passed Ronan the salt. Their fingers brushed. The smallest spark left, felt and ignored like civilized people. Sir James folded the chart. Ascot this weekend. We'll send the Gray to have a look around. Isla will manage the barn. Mr. Callahan, you'll observe and try not to get arrested. Ronan glanced at him. Sir James' tone was casual. His eyes were not. I'll do my best, Ronan said. Do better than that, Sir James replied. Ascot was a different kind of church. Hats like flowers, suits that fit like opinions, a murmur that never became noise. Ronan walked the paddock with Isla, counting faces and not looking like he was counting. Those two, he said softly near the parade ring, nodding with his chin. They stand like betters and watch like thieves. Isla didn't turn. Names? I'll have them when I need them. She glanced at him. You always talk like that? Only when I'm trying to be charming. Try harder, she said, but the corner of her mouth threatened a smile. They stopped near a rail. A man in a dark suit, expensive, plain, checked his watch and pressed a folded slip to a stable lad whose boots were too clean to be a stable lad's. The boy slipped the paper into the cotton wrap along a foreleg as if checking a bandage. Isla looked straight ahead. That's not our horse. No, Ronan said. It's the horse that's supposed to finish third. How do you know? Because fourth will bankrupt somebody, he said, and third pays a debt. Helpful, she murmured. He let the paddock swirl behind them. he kept time with the place. When the horses moved off toward the course, he stepped away. "I'll be 20 minutes. "Where will you be?" "Buying a program," he said, and was gone. He didn't buy a program. He walked, slow and easy, to the end of the grandstand where men smoked and pretended to be alone. A trash bin stood beneath a sign for Tattersall's enclosure. He lifted the lid as if looking for a misplaced ticket, slid his hand under the rim, and felt the tape. A plain envelope. He pocketed it and replaced the lid with the indifference of a man who had found nothing worth keeping. Back in the shade of a pillar, he opened the flap. Inside, a single betting docket and a pencil grid of numbers. To anyone else, odds and nonsense. To him, dates and weights, tonnage, laid against ship names no one would remember unless they had reason to. The grid sang low in his head, familiar and wrong. He folded it back into the envelope, exhaled once, and tucked it under the seat marked C12 in the third row, exactly where it was meant to end its short life. When he returned, Isla handed him a paper cup of tea. You took longer than 20 minutes. I'm slow." "Not in the ring," she said. Her eyes were steady. "If there's something you think I shouldn't know, you're probably right. If there's something you think I must know, you'll tell me." "I will." "Good," she said, and sipped her tea. The race went as races go. 2 hopeful breaks, a muddle halfway, and the sort of finish that leaves men swearing they knew it all along. The horse that should have finished third did so. People were paid. People were relieved. The air lightened by a degree. That evening, with the yard quiet and the gray dozing, Ronan stood along near the schooling ring. Halverson appeared like a shadow given permission. "You found it?" Halverson said. "I found a piece of paper," Ronan replied. "And on it?" "An itinerary for men who don't like to write the word guns. The money moves with the horses. Steel moves with the ships. The numbers marry them off." Halverson's jaw worked once. "You'll make a report." "I just did." Excuse me. "Don't be clever," Halverson said mildly. "You'll pass what you have to the usual hands, and you'll keep your own hands in your pockets unless I ask you to remove them." Ronan looked past him to the line of dark stables. "What happens when the usual hands aren't enough?" "Then we use unusual ones," Halverson said. "But not tonight." He turned to go, then paused. "The Whitcomb girl. What about her?" "Don't make it complicated." "It already is." Halverson grunted. "You're going to Ascot again, and Newmarket, and a few holes in the map where umbrellas don't reach. Don't get sentimental about horses or women. They'll both live without you." When Halverson had gone, Ronan stood a while longer, hearing night fill the empty spaces. He thought of Maggie for the first time that day, the cabin, the smell of honeysuckle, and then he let the picture fold and slide into the pocket where old things live. A soft scuff behind him. Isla, carrying a blanket over her arm. "Silver's shivering," she said. "Would you?" He took the blanket. "Of course." They walked the aisle together. The gray lifted his head as they approached, then relaxed as the wool settled over him. Isla rested a hand on the colt's neck, her voice hardly above a breath. You were gone a long time today." "I said 20 minutes. You were gone longer than that," she said, not accusing, not asking. "I'll try to be precise next time." "Please don't," she said, surprising him. "Men who are precise become boring. I'd rather be worried than bored." He looked at her, then down at the horse. "That can be arranged." She laughed once, softly. Good night, Mr. Callahan. Good night, Miss Wickham. When the lamps were doused and the yard settled, Ronan sat on the step outside the office and took the St. Christopher medal from his pocket. He turned it in his fingers, feeling the cool relief of the saint's face. Somewhere papers moved from one hand to another. Somewhere a ship's manifest grew heavier by a line that wasn't meant to be there. Here a horse slept, and a woman who spoke plainly had chosen not to ask. The world balanced for a moment on the quiet between those things. He slipped the medal back into his pocket and listened to the English night, memorizing its shape.